Hi guys. Today we're going to pick up where we left off when you were here 2 days ago with slope of a line. So if you flip in your notes to where we left off, we're going to look at today slope of a line, but instead of when we have the graph and we do rise over run, we're going to look at what if we don't have a graph, but instead we just have 2 points on a line, right? So we've been practicing counting the rise and then over to the run and making that our slope. Today we're going to use 2 points just like before, but since they're not on the graph and we can't count rise over run, we're going to use this formula here to help us find the slope of that line. And so you'll see the formula says m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It looks a lot more complicated than it is, so don't panic. M is just the variable we use to represent slope. So when you see the variable m, that just means we're talking about slope. So this says slope equals. And then when we have a coordinate point, you know that we have an x and a y, right? And so here in my first coordinate point, we've got an x value and a y value. X is always first. And then in my second point, we have an x value and a y value. And so since this is my first coordinate point, I can label this as x1 and y1 just because it's the point that comes first. And then since this point comes second, we can label that as x2 and y2. And now we can see where the x2, x1, y2, y1 come from in this formula simply from labeling the coordinate points with our x and our y, our first x and y, and our second x and y. Now, when we do these, you don't have to pay too much attention to that. The easiest way to do it is to just think that y2 minus y1 is telling us to subtract the second y from the first y. So we're just going to draw an arrow. So do that with me in your notes. Draw an arrow from the second y to the first y. We're doing y2 minus y1. So that's going to say m equals y2 minus y1. My second y to my first y was 3 and 1. So we do 3 minus 1 over. And then we're going to over here go from our second x to our first x. We'll draw an arrow from the second x to the first x and write that we're doing 2 minus 4. Okay, so we just subtracted the second y and the first y, the second x and the first x. We write that out, we have 3 minus 1 over 2 minus 4. There's our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we just subtract. We know 3 minus 1 is 2. And we know 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So I end up with my slope 2 over negative 2, which simplifies to 1 over negative 1, or just negative 1. It's okay that the negative is in the denominator. When I simplify it, just the whole thing becomes negative. Remember, just like multiplication, fractions are division. It takes 2 negatives to make a positive. So if you have 1 negative, it stays negative. So then there's my answer. We just found the slope between these 2 points. So if we were to see that line graphed, we would see that we're going down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1 between any 2 points. Down 1 over 1 would be our slope. That's what that's telling me. The steepness of this line is negative 1. So it takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. So let's do a couple more examples. So now we want the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points. So first thing we're going to do is draw our arrow. So we're going to go to y2. Okay, that's the second y, this guy over here on the end. And we go from our second y to our first y, right? It's y2 minus y1. We're just subtracting the y's on top. You always want to think subtract y's on top, x's on bottom. So we're subtracting the y's on top, the 2 second numbers. And we always go from the second to the first, right? So that gives us the negative 1 minus 2. Y's always go on top. That's the biggest mistake people make. Sometimes with the x's on top. Don't do that. Y's on top, that's your rise. Okay, the rise is the y's. The y-axis goes up and down. Then we do the x's. Subtract the second x from the first x. So we do 2 minus negative 1. You can hear the baby over there. So we've got negative 1 minus 2, which gives us negative 3 as our rise. And then 2 minus negative 1. Minus a negative is like adding a positive, right? So 2 minus negative 1 is just like saying we have 2 plus 1. Whenever you have a minus and a negative side by side like that, we can turn it into addition and say 2 plus 1 is 3. And so now we have negative 3 over 3, which we can simplify to negative 1 over 1, or just negative 1. So now we know the slope between these 2 points is negative 1. Let's do the next example. So again, we subtract the y's on top. So you're going to go from y2 to y1. So we'll draw our arrow from the second y to the first y and subtract them. We'll do 5 minus 3. And then we'll draw our arrow from the second x to the first x. And we'll do negative 1 minus negative 1. And so then we just subtract to get our answer. So we know 5 minus 3 will give us 2. And then we're going to have negative 1 minus negative 1. And again, remember, when we have minus and negative like this side by side, it just becomes adding a positive. So we can think of that as negative 1 plus 1, which is 0. Now think back to what we said in the last lesson about dividing by 0. We cannot divide by 0. We talked about what Siri tells us when we do that. Since we can't divide by 0, we say that it is undefined. So whenever 0 is in the denominator, we say the answer is undefined. Okay. All right, I'd like for you guys to try the next 2 examples on your own. So I'm going to have whoever's playing the video go ahead and pause it now so that everybody has a chance to try these next 2 examples in their notes on their own. And when everybody looks ready, go ahead and push play again. We'll go over it and see how you did. All right, so hopefully we've completed the next 2 examples. So let's check how you did on those. First thing we want to do is subtract the y's. So we do our y2 minus y1. So in the numerator, we have negative 4 minus 4. And then in the denominator, we subtract the x's. So the second y minus the first y, that would be negative 2 minus 6. And so we do negative 4 minus 4, which is negative 8. And I understand that sometimes subtracting the positive and negative integers can be kind of tricky. You're welcome to, in the assignments we do on this, use the Desmos Scientific Calculator to help you so you don't make these little mathematical errors. Then we have negative 2 minus 6, which is also negative 8. So my slope is negative 8 over negative 8, which we can simplify to just 2 negatives make a positive, so positive 1. And there's our answer. The slope between those 2 points is positive 1. Then you tried the second example. So you should have subtracted the y's on top, which would give us 6 minus 1 in the numerator, and the x's on bottom, which would give us 3 minus negative 7 in the denominator. 6 minus 1 is 5. And remember, minus and negative, when you have the 2 negative signs side by side like this, is like adding a positive. So we can change that into a plus sign and think of that as 3 plus 7, which is 10. And so my slope is 5/10. If we can simplify, we always want to simplify. So I'm going to simplify 5/10. They're both divisible by 5. 5 goes into 5 once, and 5 goes into 10 twice. So my answer to that one is 1/2. Okay, so next we see that instead of just having 2 points, we have a table with multiple points, right? So here in this table, I've got my x and y values. So this is telling me that on the line that we're talking about, we have a point at 1, 8, 2 comma 6, 3 comma 4, and 4 comma 2. So each of these points in the table represent points on the line. And so if you're asked to find the slope of this line, remember, just like when we looked at the graph of the line, it didn't matter what 2 points we pick, we always get the same slope. Works the same way for a table. It doesn't matter what 2 points we pick, we're always going to get the same slope. So we're just going to pick any 2 points we want in this table. We will get the same slope no matter what 2 points we pick. So we're going to do our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it doesn't matter which 2 points we use. So maybe I just go from my second y to my first y, y2 minus y1. Okay, we're subtracting the y's on top, so that would give me 6 minus 8. I just went from the second y to the first y. And then we do x2 minus x1. So we subtract the x's on the bottom. So that would be 2 minus 1. And so to get my slope, I do 6 minus 8, which is negative 2, and 2 minus 1, which is 1. So my slope of this line is negative 2 over 1. Whenever 1's in the denominator, we can make it a whole number. So we're just going to say that the slope of the line represented by this table here is negative 2. So let's try that again in the next table. We can pick any 2 points we want, right? So maybe this time I use these 2 points. I go from 7 to 6. So y2, my second y, minus my first y, y1, over, and then I subtract the x's, my second x from my first x. I just picked the middle 2 points this time, so that would be 9 minus 6. We're just subtracting the 2 y's on top and the 2 x's on bottom. And when we do that, we do 7 minus 6, which is negative 1. And 9 minus, positive 1, sorry about that. And 9 minus 6, which is 3. So I end up with 1 in the numerator, 3 in the denominator. So my slope here is 1/3. Rise 1, run 3. And we should see that that's our slope, no matter what 2 points we use on the line. Okay, so for the next 2 examples, I'd like for you to try them again on your own, see how you do. So I'm going to go ahead and have whoever's playing the video pause it again and give everybody some time to try the next 2. Subtract the y's on top, the x's on bottom, see what you get for your slope, and then push play when everybody looks ready. Okay, so if everyone's ready, we're going to go over what we got for these 2 examples here. It doesn't matter what 2 points you picked. We're all going to get the same answer. So maybe we use the first 2 points here. We would do the second y minus the first y. So that would give us negative 6 minus negative 8. And then on the bottom, we would subtract the x's. So I would do 5 minus 3. And when I have this minus and negative like this, we change that into addition. So negative 6 plus 8 is 2. And then 5 minus 3 is negative 2. So now I have 2 over negative 2, which simplifies to 1 over negative 1, which is the same as just negative 1. In order for it to become positive, we need 2 negatives, right? 2 negatives make a positive. If there's only 1 negative in our slope, the slope stays negative. So now we know the slope of our line for this table is negative 1. That line should be going down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, all the way down the line. So let's look at the next table. You should have done y2 minus y1. So any 2 points would do. If I use the first 2, I'm going to do 6 minus 7 in the numerator. And then I'm going to do 0 minus negative 2 for the x's in the denominator. And so 6 minus 7 gives us negative 1. And then on the bottom, 0 minus negative 2 minus a negative is like adding a positive. So we can think of that as 0 plus 2, which is 2. And so I end up with my slope, -1/2 or -1/2. So that means the slope of this line here, represented by the table, is -1/2. It's going down 1/2, down 1/2, all the way down the line. So we have a slope of -1/2. And that's it for today's lesson. So the goal for this week is that you can find the slope of a line doing rise over run, or you can find the slope of the line without the graph by subtracting your y's on top and your x's on bottom like we did today. So you're going to practice this a little bit in Edulastic. There's an assignment posted to Google Classroom. You definitely need scrap paper to do it. You shouldn't be trying to do it in your head right now. Too many mistakes will be made. So everybody needs to take out a piece of notebook paper. You're going to work out the problems that are in Edulastic, practicing your slope. Just like we did in your notes, you're welcome to use the notes to help you. You're welcome to use the Desmos Scientific Calculator to help you. I strongly recommend it so that you don't make little math mistakes when you're adding and subtracting those negatives. So make sure you get that Edulastic turned in by the end of the day today. It is for a grade. And then check the stream tomorrow for your practice assignment on your remote day. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Have a good day. We're done here. Talk to you later.